Meanwhile, Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush announcing last week that he is running to become Attorney General of Texas, that to unseat his fellow Republican Ken Paxton for the AG job. He joins me right now to talk more about that. George, Commissioner, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Great to be with you this morning.
Tell us about your campaign. What are you running on for AG?
So I'm running on securing the border, backing the thin blue line, namely the law enforcement authorities here in the state of Texas, taking on human traffickers, one of the fastest growing crimes in our state, and restoring accountability, transparency, and integrity back to the top law enforcement position in our state. It's a complex platform that I'm running on, but we're off to a great start with an endorsement from the National Border Patrol Council, the union that represents 18,000 bold men and women that wear the green every day and keep the watch for our country and for our communities.
Well, we definitely need bold responses to what we're seeing here. 2,000 people a day being sent to America from Mexico. And Vice President Kamala Harris seems to be on the defense right now after a disastrous interview this week where she told Lester Holt, yes, we've been to the border. She had to backtrack and say, oh, well, no, I wasn't at the border, but I'll visit at some point. She didn't give us a timeline. Tell us about the Biden agenda as it relates to immigration and what you'd like to see different.
Well, it's been 88 days since the vice president has been entrusted with this important role, and there's absolutely no sense of urgency. We see an uncompleted wall that was duly appropriated dollars during the Trump days to build over 700 miles. Only 150 miles were constructed. Secondly, the Remain in Mexico policy, which relieved a lot of the pressure and in exploiting the asylum law loophole that the coyotes are taking advantage of on our southern border, needs to be restored as soon as possible. And then third, we need to finish a virtual fence in unsecured areas of the southern border. Unfortunately, this president is more focused on politics and appeasing his base rather than doing the right thing and protecting our sovereignty.
Yeah, there's a lot of optics that President Biden is interested in. I will give you that. That's certainly for sure. Look, you, as AG, Ken Paxton and other AGs across the country have been the last line of defense against this administration and its radical agenda. So the question becomes, how tough are you going to be in that regard should you have the opportunity to get that seat? I mean, Ken Paxton has been at the tip of the spear confronting this administration. He has sued the administration 7 times, 5 times on immigration alone, the Keystone Pipeline, Medicaid. Are you prepared to sue this administration?
Absolutely. And I have a proven track record of winning. So during the Obama days as land commissioner, since I managed 13 million acres, most of which are oil producing, I fought the Obama administration when they tried to take private and public lands in North Texas and won on the banks of the Red River. I've fought radical plaintiffs' attorneys that have come to our state to try to list under the Endangered Species Act the golden cheek warbler or the sagebrush dune lizard out in West Texas to try to shut down oil production. And I've been successful in those efforts. And so I encourage your viewers to check out my website to learn more about my vision. But I would push back against the federal overreach that we're seeing. It's been harmful to Texas values and to the Texas economy.
Why haven't you signed on to the 7 lawsuits that are now in place?
Well, we don't have standing at the land office on those suits. I support, in theory, those suits. I haven't. What I've won in the prior cases during the Obama days, when I do have standing, I jump in there. I'm looking right now at a case where I can get some standing to force the federal government and deadbeat bureaucrats and D.C. politicians to build and to finish Trump's wall. And so more to come on that, Maria.
Yep. Now, Commissioner, the Biden administration is now threatening to sue Texas Governor Greg Abbott if he moves forward with his plan to force the state shelters to stop housing migrant children. Abbott has also said, look, you come across this border, you're going to jail. You're going to spend time in jail because it's illegal to come into this country and come into the interior illegally, getting ahead of a long line of people waiting to get green cards. Your thoughts on the administration suing Greg Abbott?
Well, if I were Attorney General, I'd obviously defend the state of Texas and support the governor's executive order. This is another example of why the Remain in Mexico policy worked. and restoring the Trump migration protection protocols that basically said that if you're an unaccompanied child, you don't get free admission into our country. We need to go back and restore the rule of law on the border, because right now the coyotes, the cartels, and yes, illegal immigrants are taking advantage of the loopholes that exist right now because of the Biden executive orders.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned President Trump, because President Trump recently endorsed Governor Abbott. How important is it for you to get President Trump's endorsement? Has he endorsed you?
So I've actually talked to the president twice. I recently talked with him on Saturday. We had a very productive call. His focus is on 2022, making sure that we have the right Republican nominees that not only put America first in their policies, but win, and making sure that we take back the Congress, but also protecting states like Texas. He knows that we are the leader of the conservative movement. He knows that the next attorney general needs to not only defend his agenda, but push back on the federal overreach. But more importantly, beat the Democrats. You have to go back 30 years to look at the last time that a Democrat won statewide here in Texas. And I have a proven track record of getting votes, being a top vote getter myself the first time I ran in 2014, and making sure that we keep Republican priorities in place here in Texas.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point that you're making in terms of Republican values in Texas, because there's a lot of concern that the policies of Texas are so good, it's attracting lots of people from across the country, but they get to Texas and then they vote blue, and as a result, the state is turning purple. So how do you justify running against a sitting Republican who has been saying a lot of the things that you say that you're doing? I mean, if Texas is already leaning purple, do you want to continue splitting up the electorate and, in the end, working against yourself?
Well, just to be clear, General Paxton was the lowest vote getter last election cycle. He almost lost to an open border Democrat 4 years ago, and even though he outspent him 5-1. So it's clear to say that with an FBI investigation looking at bribery and corruption, that Ken Paxton will lose if he's a Republican nominee. Maria, I have a great record of uniting Republicans. In 2016, after my dad left the presidential race, I supported Donald Trump. I united Republicans. I raised $1.5 million for party causes. And it was the high water mark for Republicans here in Texas. And to build upon Trump's success, we need to have more Hispanic outreach. Look at the mayor of McAllen, the first Republican in close to 50 years elected down in the Valley. These are majority Hispanic districts. I know how to communicate both in English and Spanish conservative values that resonate in Catholic, conservative, Hispanic communities throughout the state.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. In terms of the mayoral race, it certainly gave us a taste of what may come in terms of 2022 and how people are feeling. It's largely, I think, because of the porous border. Let me ask you about big tech. Ohio filing a lawsuit against Google, claiming the technology giant should be treated as a public utility. This adds to previous antitrust lawsuits against Google's parent company, Alphabet, from the Justice Department, also Europe. Would you be poised to sue big tech from Texas?
Absolutely. There's obviously been anti-competitive behavior conducted by Google, among others, that will be pursued in the antitrust case that the Department of Justice and other Republicans Attorney General and even Democrat Attorney Generals are pursuing right now. But I also think we need to reform Section 230 instead of giving total immunity away to big tech companies that regulate conservative speech to be reexamined. And I think there would be some progressives that would agree with that in the halls of power in Congress. So yes, big tech needs to watch out, because in a place like Texas, you need to have open, free, transparent marketplaces where people have choices.
All right, George, we'll be watching. Thanks very much for being here today, and we certainly will discuss and keep watching your campaign. George P. Bush, we'll see you soon, sir. Thank you. We'll be right back. Stay with us.